Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Precision Rifle Media. This week I got Greg Bell with us. Greg Bell is with the International Precision Rifle Federation. I'll be honest, I'm not overly sure what his position there is, but I'm sure he'll fill us in on it. I haven't had the International Precision Rifle Federation on in quite a while. I was talking to Marcus out there in Sweden, and I think last time we had 3 different countries on, and it was pretty hard to coordinate all those time changes. But today it's just Greg. Greg's from down south in Arkansas, and I'll let him introduce himself a little bit about who he is here. Greg, glad to have you on. I know you're on vacation. I appreciate you taking some time out to come talk with us about this stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your position is at the IPRF?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Kirk. I appreciate it. So I'm just another shooter. As you've mentioned, I'm from Arkansas. I'm a farmer there in Arkansas, which is about the only thing they'll let you do, I guess. But I've been shooting PRS style matches and PRS matches since 2016, and last year was the first year that they had a world championship. Basically, it's not a PRS match as far as the PRS name on it, but it is very much a PRS style match, and that world championship was held in France, and I got a chance to go and shoot on the open team and be a part of that. So I'm actually not a representative for the actual IPRF. What my position is I'm the president of the United States Precision Rifle Federation, Precision Rifle Association, and I'm sorry, I mentioned that I had an extra passenger in here. Anyway, I'm the president of the United States Precision Rifle Association, and we are the affiliate, the country that is recognized by the IPRF for the U.S. to do the selection process and then select the teams that we send over to the World Championship matches.
How much do I got to slip you to be in?
Probably way more than it's worth because of the threat to my life that I would get from other shooters.
No, that's cool. Okay, so give me the rundown. The U.S. You're the U.S. Precision Rifle
Association president. Yes, sir.
Association president. So, and that's the association that is affiliated with the IPRF.
Yes. So each member nation, I think it's either 29 or 30 member nations now. Each member nation has, their own just organization that is in charge of selecting the teams and all of that, and actually sending the shooters. There has to be an organization that decides, who goes from each country. So that's what the USPRA primarily does. We selected the team to go to France, and then we also have another team that's going to Italy. And it'll be the end of August, early September for the first ever Rimfire World Championships. So we're really excited about those guys and ladies that are going. We've got a really phenomenal team. I was really excited, when we went to France. I think there was 23 or 24 applications to go. This time to go to Italy on the rimfire side, I think we had 49 applications. So there's definitely been a lot more interest in being a part of this. I think a lot of guys saw us have a lot of fun in France.
Yeah. And instead of saying go to France, can you say crushed it in France?
I don't.
I'm just kidding.
I get that. And there's, of course, the U.S. is the king of, or probably the kings of trash talkers, and it is funny at times. At the same time, man, we met so many good people over there, and I'll tell you, we did win, and it was a great experience and a great time. But I'll also tell you this: there's some good shooters out there in the world, and those guys. If you want to talk about having a target on your back, we absolutely do, and that's a good thing, right? It should keep us on our toes. But I don't think it's going to be near the cakewalk or anything like that here in the future. You've got guys that are steadily coming to the U.S. to shoot 2-day matches. There's a guy this weekend from Norway that was down at my place this week and getting ready to shoot the Punisher match in Kansas. So you're seeing a lot more international guys come over here and shoot and compete very well with us. And so, we did good, and I was very proud of that. At the same time, better not take anything for granted.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's, it was a showing.
We did well, and I was very proud. Everybody did a good job, and everybody, I think, represented the country very well.
So the rimfire match, that's the final. That's in South Africa.
No. So this
Or
year,
sorry, Italy. I'm sorry, that one's in Italy,
yes,
but
sir,
the next one is in South Africa.
was in South Africa.
Okay.
So 2 weeks ago, South Africa had to make a pretty tough decision, and based upon the fact that the World Championship match was going to be 2 weeks after their national election, with a pretty high percentage chance of some civil unrest and other things, and then also some structural challenges that they have in their country, not necessarily with the match, but with the electric grid and things like that. They had to make a tough choice, and they chose to remove themselves or withdraw as a host nation. And so, that being said, when we were in France, there were two nations that were voted on to host the next World Championship in 2024, the Centerfire World Championship. That was South Africa, and that was the U.S. So, since South Africa had to withdraw, the World Championship match now comes to the U.S. for next year. Yeah, 2024. I had to double check my years.
They all kind of start moving together.
Yeah. So we've been really busy these last 2 or 3 weeks, trying to come up with a location and, getting some dates nailed down and stuff like that. So actually, the 2024 Centerfire World Championship will be in the U.S.
What range? Do you know?
Yeah. We just announced it Wednesday of this week. When Marcus talked to me 2.5 weeks ago, he said that the IPRF really wanted a field style range. The reason field style match. So when we were in France, the French team did a phenomenal job putting on a match at a military camp there in France. And but it was kind of a flat square range. They did a phenomenal job. It was a great match, but it was kind of a flat square positional type match. They did a phenomenal job with it. The IPRF kind of just wants to see, hey, let's maybe every other year as we swap this, maybe we go from a flat range to a field style range and field style match. So with that in mind, I think when I think of field style matches here in the U.S., I think Oklahoma West. In general, that's where you're going to get the wind. That's where you're going to get a lot of panning. And a lot of unique looks. And so from there, we kind of narrowed it down to some of the better ranges for field style match, and then ended up deciding on Cameo Shooting and Education Complex there in Grand Junction, Colorado. The biggest reason for that was, or a large reason for that was, being close to Grand Junction. You're 10 to 15 minutes away. You've got a lot of good lodging, a lot of good food, and
Airports.
hopefully, I feel like not only will the match be, a top level, hopefully the best match in the world, but also we're going to have really good accommodations and things like that, and just make it a lot easier, a lot nicer experience, hopefully, for most of the competitors.
Yeah, a state that's used to having guns flown in for hunting and stuff, right? So you got that, the big airport, right? Denver's big airport.
Yeah.
So you need to get in and out. The infrastructure's there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was a tough decision because there's some ranges, and I wouldn't want to go into all of them because I'll miss one. But there's I can think of one right now in Kansas, not necessarily one I'm at, but it's got almost 360 degrees of field of fire over the course of 20 stages. I mean, that was really one of the first choices that we looked at. But it's significantly further away from lodging, a good amount of lodging and food and stuff like that. And so it was a tough choice. It really was, because no matter what, we've all got our own personal biases where we'd like to know, and that was mine. So
what are the chances you were at the Sniper's Hide Cup in 15?
Man, I didn't. I shot my first match was the first AI match at the it was Core Shooting Center or Shooting Complex at that time in 2016. So that was my first 2-day or first any kind of big match.
Sure.
No, I wasn't there.
At the Sniper's Hide Cup in 15, this is just talking about like accommodations and lodging and food and stuff, right? Like we camped for one. It was out in the middle of nowhere, and but I'll never forget that. It was super cool. I don't know where Frank found the guys or whatever, but they hauled out like propane tanks and big giant pizza ovens on trailers.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, out into the middle of nowhere, big giant, big cast iron pizza oven. I'm talking about with the 8 drawers or whatever, and they fired them up and they were slinging pizzas out there in the middle of what was it, like Weldona, Colorado or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was super memorable to me because it was like kind of crazy, right? That they just like,
yeah. I'm trying to remember if that's the one. I got to be pretty good friends with Rick Reeves out of Oklahoma, and Mr. Rick can tell stories with the best of them, so I just sit around like a little kid at his feet listening. But if I remember right, the 2015 Snipers High Cup, there were some pretty memorable stories from it that I've heard from Rick as well, if it's the one I'm thinking.
Yeah, I got a feeling it probably raining, and then there was some
Yep.
prize table antics. And,
yeah.
Did you see the thing that he posted today? All the
yes.
Posted a picture today with it's been a long road. He's got a wall plastered with match booklets.
Yeah, I saw that. I just saw that before we got on here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I thought that was neat.
Yeah,
that was up there with when Regina got the quilt made with the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many good people you meet in this sport, and Rick's definitely one of them. You can't hang around Rick and not have fun, man. Like I said, I've been lucky in this sport to make a lot of good friends, and I consider him one of them.
I've hung around him a couple times, but not too terrible much.
Yeah,
I try to stay north of the Mason-Dixon line. So
I get it. Yeah, Rick will have you holding his spotlight if you ain't careful. So
yeah. I'm not afraid of that. No, I've hung out with him a little. I mean, I've talked to him before.
Yeah,
but no, he's a good guy. You're right. It's always stories. So let's talk about getting onto the U.S. team for this, right? There's applications, and so what do I just send you a resume? I'm real good, man.
And give a little bit of background, because I think that's important. Last year when we applied for France, I believe it was 13 different matches that you could submit scores from, and you could go back to 19, 20, and 21 and submit your scores. And the reason they partially did that was because of COVID really messed a lot of stuff up during those years, as far as matches and schedules and people being able to shoot and everything. And so the matches that they included on the first selection process included, like the AG Cup, the PRS finale, some of the, and I'm getting old, so my memory is not quite as good, but I believe some of the competition dynamics steel safari matches. There was a couple of what we would consider military only, use of sock, ISA sock, matches and things like that you could submit scores from. And I think they did a good job with that, because I'm not sure any of us really knew exactly what the exact style of shooting that it was going to be. So it was I think it was wise at the time to really take a big background of shooters and scores and disciplines. That being said, one of the things we realized real quick when we got to France was it's a PRS style match. And that's not to say that those are better than anybody else's or anything. There's no judgment actually in that. That's just what it is. It's PRS style shooting.
Well, look, I don't care what anybody says. The Precision Rifle Series got to the point where I go to the range and people see it and they go, "Hey, that's a PRS gun."
Yeah. I mean,
that's one of those. That's one of those PRS guns. You know.
Yeah, and so that's what we figured out in France is, we had a lot of discussions while we were there amongst the team, and one of the things we talked about is it's not a team match. It's an individual match, just like our PRS matches are. It's a positional style shooting from anywhere from 300 to 1,000 or so, somewhere in there. The targets look very similar. The time limits, all these things. It's a PRS style match. And so I know I'm sure some people were not as happy whenever we released the selection process for 2024, because instead of including matches that honestly, those disciplines, as good as they are, they had nothing to do with this style match. I mean, it would be the same thing if I'm trying to select the best soccer team, well, I don't really care what your bowling scores are.
Look, man, Michael Jordan was real good at basketball, and then he tried out baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So
and let's just say nobody remembers him for that.
yeah, absolutely. But so what we did this year for the selection process, without going into every last minute detail, is if you're interested in applying for the team, then what you do is you submit your top 6 PRS 2-day matches from last year and this year. So it's 6 total, plus your best finale from either last year or this year. 3 of those matches have to come from this year. You could submit up to all 6 of them from this year. And then basically what we do is we go down and you're just calling balls and strikes, right? If your numbers, when you add up those 6 matches in that finale, if that number's high enough, then you have a slot on the team. If that number's not as high as the guy above you, then, we have 6 slots for open, and then there's 4 slots for the other 6 divisions, if I remember right. And those would include senior open, junior open, ladies open, mil LE limited, which is 308, and then factory, which has some similarities to our production division, but not quite. It's same concept, but has some different rules behind it. So you can have up to a 30-person team from each country.
It's a lot of people.
It is. And we didn't fill a full team last year. I think we had 15.
Well, that was kind of the deal with like the win, right? Like the team win or whatever. Like did Britain win it?
So
England?
I think what you're saying is the overall win as far as, each division. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, there was some kind of an overall win that like we didn't have enough people to qualify for or whatever.
So I do know what you're talking about. I don't
know how to explain it.
No, I do understand. Basically, which team in each division, if you added up all the divisions, which team had the most points or, first place finishes, whatever. I don't remember them doing an overall winner. But I have slept since then, and I don't remember if they did that. I know our senior team was Rusty Ulmer and Paul Higley. I mean, not only 2 of the best shooters in the U.S., but much less 2 of the best seniors. And so even though they won first and second place in senior division because they didn't have a third shooter, they were not able to qualify to win as a team. If that makes sense.
That's what I'm getting at. Yep.
Yeah. So we did have one of those. And then, we didn't have a mil LEO team or a limited team or a factory team. Everything else we had filled out and everything. And obviously we're going to have a full team. I expect to have a full team this coming year. And I think a lot more countries will be a lot closer to being full. I know South Africa, and I believe France, and I think Italy. I think those 3 had full teams, but I can't. Yeah, I think that was right. So yeah, it's quite a few shooters, especially once you start looking at if each of the 29 or 30 countries starts to have 30 shooters. That's a large number.
Yeah, that's a lot of people to get in, get out. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's super cool. So do you have to be a part of, like, is there a membership or something that you have to get into?
No, sir, not right now. That is something that we've got to work out some more details and get basically a constitution put together this fall that lands on my shoulders. And that being said, it's my fault that it ain't got done yet either. But anyway, have full intentions of getting that done and written up this fall. Those will be things that we'll have to think about if and the idea being like, hey, if you want to either support the team with some kind of small membership fee, or if you want to even be eligible to apply, maybe you need to be a member that year. Those are details we do not have worked out yet, and just anyway, don't really have a clear vision on that. That'll take a lot of talks this winter.
That's part of what's kind of so fun about this is it's so new that, like,
yeah.
I mean, for me to look from the outside in, right? It's interesting and it's fun because it's so fluid still, right? It's like
it is. And that being said, it's a lot, and I don't want to overplay my role or anything like that, or make it more important than it is. But at the same time, I feel a lot of responsibility to get it right. At least on the front end, things can always be changed as you learn more in the future. But I definitely feel a pretty big responsibility to get it pretty close, for on our side. And again, just to be clear, the IPRF, their organization is absolutely established, constitution, bylaws, all these procedures,
right.
What we're discussing is just the U.S. side, the USPRA. And like I said, the intention is to make sure I have to get it done this fall. So, and I'm saying fall because I'm a farmer and I'm putting it off till after harvest.
Yeah. Don't them combines just drive themselves? Can't you?
Well, they do if you have your dad that still is willing to drive it every day. I could just say it drives itself, but
Yeah,
my
yeah,
dad has to be on there for me, so I'm grateful for that.
yeah. Talking about COVID screwing things up. I remember like at the very, very like beginning of the outbreak, we all went down to Nebraska to shoot. I think it was still the Bighorn back then, down to like Omaha, right?
Mhm.
So we're all down in Omaha shooting this match or whatever. Well, where did they bring all the sick people? Right to Omaha. Like we all went down there, like, I will be at a rifle match in the middle of the country, it'll be fine. And then you find out like, oh, there's like this is like where they bring those people.
Yeah, that was let's never go back to those days.
Oh man,
That was not fun.
not at all. Not at all. I found funny you bring it up because I found a face mask at work in my desk the other day, one of the fancy little COVID ones that we had made.
I finally took mine out of the truck a couple of weeks ago. I was like, I'm just done with it.
Yep, yep. Yeah, it's crazy. So once you okay, so you're gonna get all that stuff hammered out, and then we'll have you back on and you can tell everybody how to do it. And then and then so now you get selected, right?
Mhm.
And getting there and everything, that's on you.
Yeah, yeah. So, one of the details I failed to mention is, since we're taking your top two finales, either from last year or this year, as part of the selection process, what we're going to do is a week after the PRS finale this year, we will have applications available online on the USPRA website, and you'll be able to fill out an application, send that in. We'll take applications for a month. At the end of that month, then, we just go through. We'll have to double check. You really need to QC these things, not because anybody's a liar or a cheater on these things, but you always want to double check your numbers just in case, that everything lines up correctly from past scores. And then we send out invitations like, just again, hey, you applied for this, you made the team, are you willing to accept that position? And then along with that is, yes, this is definitely self-funded. I have to be careful to not quote somebody else, but I do have, it's something I would love to see one day, that these shooters' costs are offset in some shape, form, or fashion on a yearly basis. I've had some good talks with people about that, and I've got no direction on exactly how to accomplish that just yet. I had good talks with Eric Cortina, the way they do it with F-Class and some things. And so I haven't come up with a good plan, but it's still something that's in the back of my mind that I would love to see some help, and for look, it's an honor to be able to go and do what we did, or at least it was for me.
Sure.
It was an honor. At the same time, it would be cool if, like I said, they could be recognized. A monetary assistance is a recognition not only of the sport but of the shooter and the accomplishment.
Right.
And just
And
still got to work out a plan.
And it's not cheap, and that
No.
you could be a really good shooter to go represent the country, but that might keep you out of it.
Yeah, I mean, the goal obviously is I would never want money to be a determining factor for a guy who's one of the best, or a lady who's one of the best, being able to go and represent the country, in these competitions. But my dad told me an old wives' tale that apparently money doesn't grow on trees either. So we're still
Grows
working.
out of the ground, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that combine's for.
Yeah. What combine payments are for.
Yeah. That is not a cheap piece of equipment.
No, sir, not anymore.
There was a guy on Facebook talking about farming quick. He was going through and he's like, I planted this much corn and this, I got this much per bushel, and that's this much money. And it's like a pretty big number, right?
Yep, 100%.
And then he's like, but I had to take out a loan for $250,000 just for the seed,
Yeah.
and then so I got to pay that back. And then he goes over like the tractor. He's like, this tractor was $350,000, and this one was the sprayer on the back was another, whatever, $500,000 or whatever, and he's like,
Yeah.
So, and then the number, like that big number up top, right? It's like keeps going down and down and down.
Yeah, farmers are the world's best. They don't have it harder than anybody else, but they complain the loudest. So you got to watch us farmers.
Yeah. At the end of it, he's like living in a tent, No, that's That's cool. I used to work on a dairy farm.
Oh, that's real work. I farm like 8 months out of the year. That 12-month stuff, I've got no desire to do that.
That was the thing about the cattle, man. The cows, dairy cows, anyway. It was milking them in the morning and milking them in the afternoon, and it was small stuff back home in Wisconsin, right? And it was, now there's like all the milkers are like automatic and
Yep.
stanchions and whatever. It was all by hand back then, and it was you had to touch every cow twice and.
Yeah. That's real work. I don't do any of that.
um, so back to shooting. So the 22 stuff, let's talk about that quick because that's in Italy. That's this year.
Mhm. Yeah.
When are the applications live for that?
So that's already been done. One thing that we kind of struggled with last year in 2022 to go to France is because the Russians decided to pull a few stunts over there last year. The match was originally going to be in Hungary, I believe, and because of the geopolitical things that were going on, Hungary had to pull out just because of safety and things like that, and just really the unrest. You just don't know what's going on, and so France actually picked up and said they could host the match. I think they said 5 months. I think it was roughly 5 months before the match was held. France was like, "Hey, we can do it. We'll make sure it goes on." And so that being said, we didn't even really get to apply until I think it was March sometime last year. And so the match was in the match was right around the middle of August. And so, man, everything was just jam packed, and we were really behind the ball in a lot of ways when you start talking about getting customs forms to be able to get your rifle back in the country and things like that. So after France, the team held an election just to elect new officers and things like that. And so I got elected president. Rusty Ulmer and Coulter Marriott are the two vice presidents. And one of the first things we wanted to do was, hey, we've got to get. There's going to be a Rimfire World Championship in 2023. We have got to get a selection process done, and we've got to get it turned in so that people know what they got to do, and then be able to take applications. So all that being said, we didn't even release the rimfire selection process until I believe somewhere around the 1st to the middle of October last year. Well, and it went basically up until the rimfire finale in Texas. So I'm getting somewhere with all this. The point is we've kind of been behind the ball from the get-go. So with rimfire, we didn't want those guys having to plan a lot of things in 3 to 4 months. We wanted them to be able to know, hey, you're on the team and this is what you've got to do. And you've got 7 months now, 8 months to get all this done. So we took applications in the month of December and then selected the team the 1st of January. Very similar to how we've done with rimfire. As soon as we were done with the rimfire selection process, we immediately started on the centerfire selection process for 2024. This whole time we have got to get in front of these things, because if you're taking scores over 2 years, you need to let people know what scores they need to be getting to have a chance, and you need to tell them 2 years ahead of time, not 3 months before you're going to take applications. So
right, because otherwise you could be shooting matches and shooting the wrong ones, right? So you need to know
exactly.
if your goal is to get there, you got to know where to drive.
So we've been fairly busy since October of last year, trying to get all of this stuff done so that we're now out in front of all of these processes. So that being said, after Italy, as soon as Italy is over with, then we're going to go back to the rimfire team, talk to them. I was very fortunate. I know this much about rimfire. I've never shot a rimfire match. And so my knowledge base on that is almost nothing, as is most everybody on the team that went to France. And so we were very fortunate that we had some people step up and really that were just, not only were they instrumental, if it hadn't been for them, there wouldn't have been a good selection process. We had Greg Stewart out of the Northeast. You have Paul Dolan out in the West, and then you've got Justin Carbone up in the upper Midwest, and those guys really did a phenomenal job coming up with a selection process for rimfire, and then us getting it published and all that. So as far as Italy this year, applications are already done because intentionally they were already done, right? We need people to have the time to plan these trips and to be able to save money or whatever else it is. And so, yeah. And then, as far as 2026, we're still a little bit off from that. We're going to start working on that probably in November, December of this year, start trying to get that done. So again, people have continuity to know what they need to shoot if they're interested in participating.
Sure. That's awesome. What do you have a website for the US?
Yes, I do. Hold on just a second, because I don't exactly remember the name of it, even though I've got it. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's us-pra.com, us-pra.com. That has like our applications right now. You can still see an example of the rimfire application that's on there. And then it will, anytime we have selection processes, those are announced on there as well as the it's actually the United States Precision Rifle Association Facebook page. So we try to, again, me and you talked beforehand, I'm not a really great social media guy. But we're trying to keep everything, any information that people need to know, they can find on both of those places. I do a decent job of keeping that up to date.
Yeah, it's a nice little website. I just jumped on there quick just to check it out. I see, well, there's Leon and
Yep.
Yeah, bunch of familiar faces in there.
Yeah.
Allison. Man, yeah. So, what's going to be? I got one more question. Australia's in on this, right?
Excuse me.
Australia is in on this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. They had a team in France. I don't remember how many shooters they had, but they did have a team in France.
When are they going to start pulling their weight and host? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, again, I found out the other day that I have a condition called being human, as do most of us. So I'm selfish, right? Not only, it's hard to describe how much fun it is to travel around another country with some of your best buddies, to be able to carry a rifle and shoot it. I want to be careful. I am not in any way, shape, form equating shooting a world championship match, which is an honor, with somehow serving your country. I'm not necessarily saying that at all. But for us, it was a blast. I mean,
you're representing. I mean, you're representing the country at that point.
No doubt. But so selfishly, I want to see Australia. I was really disappointed that South Africa had to make the decision that they did. It was the right decision, but I was disappointed. I really wanted to go see South Africa and things. And so it is a lot of work. I mean, it is we can easily acknowledge that at the top of the PRS, the top 10, 15, or 20, man, the air is pretty thin, meaning a lot of times on most any given weekend, any one of those guys can win. And so it's the same way with this selection process. It's very competitive because there's a very limited number of slots.
It's only a couple of points between first and second and 15th.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would suspect between the first open shooter and the sixth open shooter that makes the team, I expect there's going to be probably somewhere between a 3 and 5 point spread, somewhere in there. I don't know that yet. Just kind of doing some preliminary math the other day. It's very, very, very competitive. And so, all those slots being pretty sought after, in my opinion. Man, I definitely want to go see Australia. It's fun to be able to do this.
Back to the Australia thing. I wasn't trying to pick on Australia specifically.
Yeah.
I was, but not. So I believe that they have some weird, well, I mean, it's weird to us, rules with guns, right? Like, I don't believe they're allowed to have, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can't, like, a lot of our reticles are not allowed over there.
So I'm not familiar with that. You could be 100% correct. Here's something that you accidentally bring up that is something that is very good about the IPRF, and one of the reasons that it was established and brought together and formed to begin with, not the only reason, but one of the reasons is a lot of these countries, let's just say some European countries. I'm not going to say exactly which one because I'll pick the wrong one, but let's say some European.
The only one, yeah, you'll grab the only one that's like that's how I
a lot of these countries, unless there is an internationally recognized body for this exact shooting sport, and it's a nonprofit organization, has to be nonprofit, then a lot of times these guys are either limited in any kind of equipment they can purchase or own, but then also they're limited on the amount of ammunition or reloading supplies and things like that. But if there is an internationally recognized nonprofit organization, so a governing body, and it gets recognized in that country, and these guys fall underneath it, they apply to be a part of that organization, then now it's not that they have no limits, but now the limits are reasonable to the sport that they're participating in, if that makes sense. So the IPRF, again, not that it's the only reason that it was formed, but a huge benefit to a lot of other countries that are trying to join is, depending upon their government and political situation, if they can get this sport recognized by their country's governing body for shooting sports, then it really starts to allow them a little bit more freedom with the rifles and things like that, and ammo and reloading supplies. So that's pretty cool, we take freedom for granted, right? And it's just very natural. We take it very much for granted. And I couldn't imagine not being able to do what I enjoy doing, just because there was actual limits that were enforced on top of me. We're so free, we can't imagine that, but that's not the situation in most of the world. And so it is pretty cool to think that these world championships hopefully will continue to promote the sport. And by the sport, I'm not calling it PRS, I'm calling it precision rifle competitions, which look like PRS matches, that style. It is cool to think that maybe that would also be a benefit to some people in other countries long term, for them to be able to enjoy the same things we do.
Yeah. Anybody listening in Australia, I think they're like I think they're either number 2 or number 3 on the countries that listen. Canada, them in Canada, the 2 and 3.
Interesting.
Somebody correct me, please. I'm interested. I believe somebody told me that there's something to do with the reticles. You guys are like limited on the reticles, something to do with that, like a military style reticle. So maybe if it's like a competition reticle instead of a military reticle, it's okay. I don't know. I remember hearing something about that. I could be way off.
Yeah. Now I'm going to have to look it up after we get off of here, because I've never heard it before, but I'm interested now.
Yeah, I don't know. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong, but that was from a long time ago. So even that could have even have changed. I don't know, but yeah. So yeah, like I think that's where the IPRF and the USPRA, I think that's it's gonna grow the sport. And then because like right now, you got to think like most of the stuff, like how much stuff do you buy for doing this that doesn't come from the US?
I mean, I'm sure some of it, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's some, but I couldn't think of what it would be, except for maybe powder, possibly.
Yeah, powder or casings.
Yeah. Possibly. Yeah. I run Alpha Brass. So, I mean, but yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
so but a lot of people with Lapua or Norma, there
that's
would be
right.
your European, but for the most part, your actions are all made here. Which I'm not saying that we should be outsourcing. I'm just saying like more options are good, right? So like if
Yes.
you
Yeah.
start seeing this kind of thing go on, you might start seeing bullet companies from like what's that GS Customs out in where are they, South Africa? Bullets.
I recognize the name. I'm not sure where they're located at. That sounds right, but I can't swear.
I had them on a long, long time ago. Gal owns it, but or did her dad or her grandpa did before her or something. But you might see some more product, some more the whole sport grows for everybody at this point.
Absolutely. Well, and I've had talks with different manufacturers here in the U.S. since the World Championship, and in France, and they would tell you, especially the guys that are higher up, bigger companies that have international representatives and distributors and things like that. Like when they did their first quarter meetings, it was the deal in France was brought up quite a bit. We all acknowledge that at least the pond, that PRS pond that we live in, it's not a big pond. We're not talking about millions of shooters or anything like that. But I think a lot of people would acknowledge that the trends in the PRS style shooting do end up driving a decent amount of things in the industry, and then also The hunting market. Obviously, the hunting market's not going to follow 25-pound rifles. We get that. But it absolutely follows stock wise, action wise, and things like that, barrels and things. Again, I'm not overestimating any one person's or any one sport's importance, but I am acknowledging that people do pay attention to the trends and the style of shooting, not just PRS, but I'm using it as an example. And that's, again, that is cool for me to think about, that we could be a catalyst to help other countries be able to enjoy a sport that, for me, no, this isn't my life, but like all my really good friends shoot this sport. Like the friendships I've made here are inestimable.
Yeah. And that the thing too, right, is like you find out somebody else shoots long range, and then like all of a sudden there's kind of like this, there's always that thing, there's always that, now correct me if I'm wrong, but somebody tells you that they shoot long range, and there's always that kind of like,
you speak a common language. Yeah.
There's always that, but do you, right? Because well, I got my 300 Nick Clover leaps at 100 yards, and you find out like, oh, this guy doesn't really. But then you find out somebody, and you're like, oh, what do you shoot? And if they tell you like, I got a 6 GT and a impact and whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, this guy does know things.
Yeah. No, it's
and then immediately
common language.
Yeah, and then immediately it's kind of like okay, we should probably find a beer. No.
No, that's very true.
Yeah, because you always go, well, I shoot long range. I got a 338 Lapua.
Yeah, been there, done that.
But yeah, so is there any plans? So you're talking about the range kind of going from a field match to more of a square match to a field match to a square match kind of a deal. I think that's cool. Is there any plans in would be the word? I got a feeling the answer will be no, but to different disciplines, or maybe adding classes or anything like that. Do you see any of that happening?
I know, as far as I'm aware, and again, I'm not necessarily that high up on the pecking order, but I've become pretty good friends with Marcus Olson. You mentioned, the president of the IPRF out of Sweden, and we talk probably once a week or so, probably more than he wants to, but anyway. As far as I'm aware, that has not been discussed. And just to be super honest with you, there's growing pains right now.
Oh yeah, sure.
Look, it's one thing to try to start a new rifle sport in the U.S.
Well, look at the PRS, man. The PRS was started in what, 10, 12?
I believe 11 or 12. Yeah.
And look at the, because Rich
Emmons,
yeah. He he had it, and then there was ups and there was downs, and it got sold and it got traded and it got sold and it got it, and then it was down and then it was up, and then and that's just over here.
Yeah,
and then there was, that was back when there was like 8 matches a year, and it was the same 60 people at every one.
Yeah. Well, when you start looking at not only obviously different countries, different languages, they may shoot similar style matches, but the way they run their matches maybe in a way that is considerably different than how we would recognize it. Not that we're not talking about everybody's hanging from their feet shooting upside down, but there are nuances amongst how we shoot and how matches are run that we don't consider them necessarily part of the rule book, but they're so standard to the way we shoot matches that anything outside of that feels very different.
Can you bring up an example?
This is a small thing, very small, so I always want to weigh my words that I'm not offending somebody. Some countries, instead of impact, they say hit. That's not a problem. That's not anything wrong with that. Just very different. Some countries, their definition of sky loading would be a little bit more lax than ours. I'm not accusing them of being inherently unsafe, but that for us, that sky loading thing, it's not, look, nobody ever does it perfectly at every match. I'm not saying that, but for most guys that are serious about the sport, like, it's a pretty serious deal, right? We don't want to be doing that. And for anybody listening that doesn't know what I'm saying, it's, closing your bolt before your eyes in the scope and you have, the target in your scope. If I'm closing my bolt before I see the target, at any point in time, that's sky loading. I'm not saying you got to be pointing it at the sky.
Mhm.
That's the worst infraction, but just there's no reason to close your bolt unless you can see the target. Anyway, just small things like that. I can't think of a big example necessarily. There have been a few things as we worked with Italy and talked with them about how they're going to run the Rimfire World Championship. It's just a little bit different. And so all those things together, plus at times a language barrier. Here's my answer to your question as far as adding classes. I think that could happen in the future, although I've not heard any talks about it. I think the main thing right now is really trying to get the rest of the world standardized on a general template of how matches should be. Look, if you want to run 3-minute stages, that's not against the rules. Fine, no big deal, But in general, I think the goal would be for each country to be, sorry about that, each country to be on a common page with 85 to 90% of the way a match is run. Once that happens, then I think things are running smoothly. You can start talking about a few other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get the foundation built before you can start.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And you got to remember, if they started shooting these style matches back in 2000 or early 2000s, or maybe a little bit before, in a lot of these countries, they haven't been doing that, but maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 or 6 at the most. And so there's going to be growing pains with these things. And you kind of see it with South Africa. And that's not to point a finger at them. That's just to say, hey, they had good intentions and they've got a phenomenal place to host the match. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out because of things outside their control. And, I think once things kind of even out a little bit, a lot of things could be discussed in the future.
Yeah, that's well, and everything's so crazy right now, right? With
Yeah.
the Ruskies and all of
The
that.
rest,
Yeah. So it's like,
I want to be careful about picking too many fights, especially on a podcast. But I will say this. I was so disappointed that a certain country wasn't at the World Championships in France. I'm not going to say who I'm talking about, but maybe it's been mentioned already on here. I was so disappointed that we didn't get a chance to shoot against them. And I think they honestly have good shooters as well. I'm not clowning on anybody, it was just kind of, there's still some of that old little bit of Cold War stuck somewhere down in all of us, and
yeah.
just want to win.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You just want to win. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how this all shakes out with everything with the USPRA and with the IPRF and everything. Just all the stuff that it's really, like I said, it's interesting to watch it because it's growing and it's growing quickly and it's starting to get its place in the world. Where people are gonna. The last one there was a lot of people watching it. And I think it's going to be more this year and more the year after that.
Well, and just to go ahead and promote him, the guy who's the match director at the Punisher match this weekend is Michael Beamer. He's a pretty good friend of mine, and also I think honestly, one of the best match directors in the country for PRS matches, especially field style matches. His courses of fire, I think, are as good as anybody's, if not better, and that's a personal opinion, but I think Beamer does a great job. Well, from the get-go, when Marcus talked to us about, the match coming to the US, to me, something that's very important is match director has obviously a very important role in running a great match. And so Beamer has agreed to be our match director. Right now, it looks like Ken Wheeler, obviously the new owner of the PRS, he's going to be the co-MD. And just want to make sure I say this clearly. That's not to say that the IPRF and the PRS are now the same organization. They are not. They have two different, not different, but there's different goals and priorities for each organization. We're excited about being able to partner in a close way with the PRS, but they will always be two different organizations with different focuses, and that's a good thing, So
Ken's
anyway,
going to be coming through my place next week. I'm going to tell him that you were talking bad about the PRS.
No, Ken knows better.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Ken and Missy are really great people,
I'm just kidding.
But I'm really excited about the match. Like I said, I'm excited about being able to show off, one of my buddies, man. I think Beamer, like I said, I think he's that good. And I'm excited that the rest of the world will get to come shoot what I think will probably be one of the best matches they ever shoot, but being at Cameo is going to be a lot of fun. I had originally switched over to 308 at the start of this year because I think I'm a decent shooter, but I'm not going to make one of those 6 open spots, and that's okay. So I switched over to 308 to try to shoot tack and maybe make the limited team. And I'm still working that way. I don't know if I'm going to quite make it or not, but either way, if I get a chance to make the team, and shoot 308, hey, that's a win. But if not, I'm really excited about being able to host this. And I don't want to make it seem like everything's a competition, but
Yeah.
sometimes everything's a competition, and we want to put on the best match ever. I mean, we want to win, of course, the actual divisions, but we want to put on the best match ever also. And man, there's a lot to be excited about. And you're right, the way it's grown in other countries, and you know, it feels like you're contributing something to the rest of the world, if that makes sense. I've told a lot of guys, if you look at the IPRF and even the USPRA as what it does for us, I don't know that that's really the right way to look at it, because on paper there's not just necessarily a ton of obvious return, but if you look at it as a chance for the U.S. to contribute to the rest of the world, to guys that don't have the freedom, the level of competition, the number of matches that we enjoy and we take for granted, I think that's probably the right way to look at it. And so, if it's something to where we can give back in whatever shape, form, or fashion, I think that's pretty cool to hopefully see somebody else have the same opportunities we have one day on any given weekend.
Yeah. Even talking about matches and stuff, like you said, like, man, it wasn't that long ago. You had to drive to matches. You had to go a long ways for
Yeah.
most people did, I mean, unless you were really lucky and, there was something close by. But even the people that, that are just getting into it, I mean, you can find local matches pretty
Yeah.
easy anymore, not too terribly far from, where you live generally, right? Most people anyway.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that way, 5 years ago to 8 years ago.
No, we've been lucky. I live in Arkansas, and there's been a new.
I got you. I even got you. Like, how do I say it?
That's fine. That sounds much more appropriate than when I say Arkansas. But there's a new range that opened up just a year and a half ago there in Little Rock. They're getting a 2-day PRS match next weekend, Twisted Barrel Precision there in Little Rock. And so, man, I've lived in a state where there wasn't really even any 1 days for the most part, up until a year and a half ago. I was driving to Tennessee, Louisiana, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas, to go shoot. So yes, it is cool to see it growing. And like I said, something interesting to me is the culture seems to stay the same. And what I mean by that is this sport's pretty ruthless towards not nice people. How about that? Not nice competitors. And if you're not a pretty decent dude, this sport has a tendency of weeding you out in a reasonable amount of time. But it's the atmosphere, the culture at matches, the helping each other and things like that. It's funny how that automatically translates into these new places and things like that. And we even saw that in France. I felt like I was at a 2-day match in the US based upon the feel and the camaraderie and people cheering each other on and things like that. Don't get me wrong, there were a few people there that were maybe not as nice, but maybe they don't like me either, so that's fine. But in general, like everybody there, you felt like you were at a USPRS match. That's how it felt.
Yeah. And I mean, not everybody's going to get along all the time, right? But
no,
but for the most part, yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah, it doesn't take long before if you're cheating, I guess, for one, that doesn't go over well. But
it's a good thing. The sport's pretty ruthless, and but it maintains,
and generally morally sound, right? Like most
Yeah.
people, most people that are doing this are the kind of people that they would rather lose honorably than win dishonorably, right? Like for the most, I mean, there's been some issues in the past or whatever, right? But not many, and not in a long time.
No, I think, and I'm not mouthing this sport because I used to shoot. I was into pistols before I ever got into rifles, and just IDPA because that was what was available to me. So I was never a USPSA guy or IPSC, but still friends with a lot of guys that shoot that. And I think, I think to a man, I think our culture is a little bit different than theirs. I'm not saying better, but I'm saying it's a little bit different than those guys, and I think it is a good thing.
I think we should bring pistols back into long range rifle matches.
I, you know, I, I'm, I'm good either way. I am Switzerland on that. I am neutral.
Yeah, it's always funny. There's always like somebody's like, I hate these things, they're just hammering rounds off, and you know, I get why we don't do that anymore, but I do kind of miss it.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm indifferent. I could enjoy it and I could leave it like it is. I'm good either way.
Yeah, I'm with you. 100%. Yeah, I'm with you. It was fun. It was different. There was something like that. But all right, man. So what? Let's get some closing thoughts. Something you didn't get to throw out there. Something you wish people knew.
I'm sure I wasn't. Unfortunately, I tend to talk in circles many times, and I talk too much. I'm sure there's some things that I probably didn't make perfectly clear about, whether it's selection process or things like that.
Luckily, we were here to talk a bunch, so.
The big thing I want people to know is, man, if y'all have got any questions or things like that, please don't hesitate to catch me on Facebook, Messenger, Gregory Bell. I want people or message, you can obviously message the USPRA on Facebook as well. We've got an email contact on the website. But I want people to be informed about what we're doing and want everybody to have an equal opportunity to participate. And then one other thing that I probably didn't hit on, one of the things that I am excited about with the World Championship being here in the U.S. is we do have, I think, the best, if not most of the best companies in this sport located in America. And I'm really hoping that companies will be interested in coming out, whether they want to set up a booth or just have somebody walking around shaking hands, whatever. I'm even hopeful that, there's depending, we still got to work out some details on this. But, I hope companies are willing to come out and just maybe sell products to the international guys while they're here, as long as it's legal for them to get it back in their country.
Right. That's them.
But anything we could do to support the international guys, and I'm not saying that from a place of we are above them, so we need to pick them up. I'm saying it like, hey, these dudes are just like us. Let's take care of these guys,
Yeah, I see it as the same thing as like when a new shooter comes out to a match, and like, and I'm not, it is weird. I'm not trying to say like they're inexperienced. That's not what I'm trying to say at all, because there's a lot of really good shooters, but it's like, if you could shoot long range for a long time, be really good at it, right? And then go to a TRS match, and there's going to be stuff that you're going to learn. Like, you're going to learn a lot of things really fast.
Yeah.
You might be really good at shooting long range, but you're about to learn something about shooting these matches, right? And but everybody there is willing to help you. All the guys for the most part, right? So the way I see it is kind of the opportunity to be the experienced one, helping them onto the rock, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, no, it does. And I mean, more than anything, everybody's weird in their own way, and God knows I'm weird too.
Yeah.
But something I'm excited about is, like I said, just being able to showcase my friends, Beamer and Ken Wheeler being the MDs. I think we're going to have I'm sure some of my buddies will come out and help RO. And I think we got the best ROs in the world, and things like that. That stuff, for me, I take a small amount of pride in to I'm not completely altruistic in everything I do by a long shot, but I want to showcase my buddies and these companies and these people, because they've all been so good to me and to the sport that I enjoy, that I want to be able to promote them in a certain aspect, if that makes sense, for other people to be able to meet these good people in this sport.
Yeah, for sure. So cool, man. So you gave out kind of the deal on where to find you. If anybody has trouble with that, just get a hold of me. I'll help you out there. But man, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on. I know you're on vacation, like I said. You lost your co-pilot there towards the beginning, but
yeah. And if you got any other questions, Ken Wheeler's cell phone number is
yeah, exactly. So man, like I said, I appreciate your time. And then let's keep in touch. And when as things change, as things move, as there's stuff to talk about, as you get maybe the Constitution drawn up or whatever, as there's a chance to maybe sign up for it or support it or whatever, let's do another one.
Yeah, thank you a lot, Kirk. I really appreciate it. Again, I gave you my spiel yesterday about I'm the president of the USPRA, and that and $2 will buy you a Coke. What is important about it is, again, hopefully continuing to not only promote the sport here, to give your top guys a little bit another level to achieve for, but also, man, I am really passionate about seeing this help the shooters in other countries. And so I appreciate very much you just giving us an opportunity, or giving me an opportunity to talk too much. But I'm very grateful. So thank you very much.
Yeah. And even maybe, like I said, I've been talking to Marcus about doing one. Maybe we could do where it's you and him together, maybe, or
God, nobody could get a word in edgewise between the two of us.
Yeah, maybe, or you two, and maybe I don't remember who's running South Africa anymore, but is it Pete?
Well, it used to be Rob Ramsden. I'm not 100% sure who's running South Africa now. I cannot remember.
But maybe we'll try and wrangle up somebody else to try and get an outside perspective, like for us or whatever. That way we could have like inside, maybe one of the Aussies or something.
I know I know a couple of guys from Great Britain that would probably be real good also.
Yeah, dude, let's try and set something like that up, get a couple people on, and then just kind of do a quick like roundy round and just talk about that kind of stuff. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mr. Kirk.
So cool, man. I appreciate your time. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. So with that, everybody, we're gonna wrap this one up. But questions, comments, or concerns, if you want to get a hold of Greg, you can get a hold of me. I'll help you get in contact with him if you can't figure out any other way. Kirk at precisionriflemedia.com, and then that'll shoot me an email directly. Precision Rifle Media on Facebook, and then on all of them, Twitter, and which I don't really Twitter, but Instagram. We're on Instagram too. Been doing that a little bit. So check those out. Website, precisionriflemedia.com. Contact us. That'll shoot me one if you need answers quickly, or I'm not answering. Elise, ELYSE at precisionriflemedia.com. That'll kick me in the rear end. But with that, everybody, I really appreciate you listening. Take care. Try to get to the range, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.